Welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. I am your host. Excited to be here. Todd Uri, Pharmacy Podcast Network. What is going on this week for everyone listening? I'm telling you what, there's just an ongoing energy in our profession, and energy is both sometimes it's negative energy, sometimes it's positive energy. I'm seeing a lot of positive. I am a glass half full kind of guy, so I do like the positive. Not to say that things aren't all rosy and sunshine and rainbows in pharmacy land, because it's not. You are all under a tremendous amount of pressure. I talked to a TikTok. I can't even say it. Tic Tac. Remember Tic Tacs? Whatever happened to Tic Tacs? Today's episode is brought to you by Tic Tacs to make your breath smell better. No, if you're going to want your breath to smell better, you should be using breath rocks anyway. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of those. You might not be old enough to remember that pop candy that you stuck in your mouth and put a little Coke in it. There was a, I'm getting off track. Can you hear this? Completely off track. But there was a wise tale or wives' tale. Is it a wise tale or a wives' tale? And why would they say wives' tale? But anyway, there was like a long tale or a tall tale back in the day, that there was a little boy who ate a big bag of Pop Rocks and then drank Coca-Cola, and it blew his stomach up and he died. And then our parents back in the day, because I was a 70s and 80s kid, would not let us try these Pop Rocks. So believe me, when I heard about breath rocks, which has zinc in it and makes your breath smell good, I was interested in trying it and did, and I love them. So now back to what I was saying. So TikTok, a TikTok star that's out there, Dr. Katrina Forbes, going as Katie Forbes, 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 just like the magazine and big conglomerate, media conglomerate. She is blowing up TikTok with a lot of good information about conditions and demystifying what pharmacists do for the public. She's going to be on a special episode that we're going to release. And I like to organize podcasts in categories, and I don't even have a category for this. It's just going to be a standalone episode. We're going to put some LinkedIn attention behind it, and we're going to feature her because she is just a powder keg of energy and of education for our pharmacists that are looking to educate the public more. I know in last week's TWIRx, we talked about a little bit about public relations. I'm going to talk about that a lot. I'm going to hammer your ears, all of you pharmacists listening right now, about making sure that you are getting yourself out there and your knowledge out there in some capacity, blogging, podcasting. Come on This Week in Pharmacy and talk about your passion. Social media, just simple posts. Katie obviously picked TikTok, and she has over 250,000 or 300,000 people that are following her, and she's been on TikTok for a year. Like, that's nuts. That's the kind of pharmacist stuff that we need to educate the public of what's going on. It is American Pharmacist Month, so a shout out to all of you beautiful pharmacists out there that are working hard in your line of in level and sector of pharmacy. The one that's getting hammered the most right now, we know, is the community pharmacy setting. Mostly the big retail chains, the big red engines that are out there chugging along, grinding pharmacists to the ground, and just because of the way the models are, and shutting down pharmacists all across the country, causing massive issues with public health and pharmacy deserts. And I guess that's the half glass empty side of this profession, but it's true. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see what our payment sources and insurance providers and big PBMs, and a shout out to Express Scripts and Optum and CVS Health. You guys are a bunch of schmucks. You're jerks. You ruined the profession for us. But We are going to survive. We're going to come back. And when the FTC gets their teeth into these PBMs and starts tearing open and making things more transparent, I know without a doubt that the PBM models are going to change, and the rise of cash-based pharmacies are going to come out. The rise of our entrepreneurial pharmacists are going to grow, where you guys are going to have your own businesses. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Thea Blystone from the great city of Meadville, Pennsylvania, way up north from me, here on the western side of Pennsylvania. And Thea is not waiting for permission. She has built a remote patient monitoring and remote pharmacy services business that is rocking and is making her money. That is all she's doing. And I'm going to pick on the Reddit team. I can't wait. Maybe someday I'll get back on Reddit. But all you Reddit writers, 75% of you on Reddit pharmacy are just negative Nellies. And I remember coming on there 5, maybe even 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago, and just being a beam of light and saying that, this can change and that will change. And basically just having no positivity. All of the people were making fun of podcasts and the positive lighting of where we're going, and this is never going to happen. Well, shame on you, because it is happening. All right, so if we're at 305, 310, 100,000 pharmacists in the United States, 5% of you, at a minimum, 5% are entrepreneurs. And if you think of that 5% growing into 2025 and reaching that 7%, the 10%, and the 20 and 25%, as an entrepreneur pharmacist, you're impacting the macroeconomics of the pharmacy profession, and the grip that the insurance company has on controlling your compensation as a pharmacist is destroyed. And if you could do something to generate enough money to be happy, to be able to pay your bills, working for yourself, working for your patients, working for your community, or maybe in telehealth, or maybe in some kind of remote pharmacy services. So pay attention to today's episode with Dr. Thea Blystone, and how important it is to remember that there's another pathway for you as pharmacists. And please, it's not a overnight thing. You can't just turn it on. You can't just apply for your own position, and next thing you know, you're making 120,000, 140,000 a year. Never going to happen. But if you don't start today, it's like me. Do you know I'm finally getting physically fit? I'm 5'7". I think I started out when we started tracking, and not so much my weight. It's more about being, physically in shape and getting my muscle back and stuff. But 5'7", 186 pounds, a little chubby guy. I am 167 pounds now. I talked to my physician here in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and I should be, from a BMI perspective, maybe between 140, 150. Going to be shredded and get back in my muscles at this stage of my life. I got to do that and do it now. But that body building, and not like big muscle bodybuilding. I'm talking about just taking care of yourself. But that health and eating right and getting in shape, that is not an overnight thing, and neither is building your business. I don't care if it's a side hustle, and instead of making 120,000 at a chain pharmacy, and then you're making a little 20, 30, 50,000, and then all of a sudden you make enough to make the jump. It is possible. There are organizations ready to help you. There's people like or Thea Blystone that's ready to go. We're going to get into that. And then we're going to talk about pharmacy compounding. So we're going to have the APC here. Tenille Davis is back. We want her viewpoint and information, and just giving us a heads up on compounding and how that's going to become a pathway for pharmacies that are into it. And before we get into that, I do, as I always do, I want to talk about the news. This is TWIRx News. I should have a sound bite. It's like TWIRx News, right? But we don't have that because sometimes we're just not as fancy as the big organizations that are out there with news. But what we are going to do is focus on things that that are either peculiar, because today's news kind of is in fact peculiar. I'm not sure what people are thinking down in the Houston area, and if you didn't hear this, it's probably because it's not hit the big time news yet. But starting off, and this is unfortunately in the crime section. The headline says 3 Houston area pharmacy operators are charged with illegally selling 70 million opioid pills. Like, just time out for a second. So opioids have gotten an extremely bad rap, and a shout out to the physicians and the pharmacists who know best and know that there's a proper time and usage for opioids, and they shouldn't be vilified. And patient advocacy is after these organizations who are vilifying opioids. But obviously, as clinicians, how slippery of a slope opioids can become in an addiction. But we've had so much attention in the last 10 years on opioids and what it's done to wrecking so many people's lives and killing people and overdoses. Why in the world, as an organization, if you're going to commit a crime, would you pick opioids to do it with? The U.S. Department of Justice unsealing charges in a massive opioid pills distribution leads to 9 people pleading guilty, in all part of a larger enforcement action related to unlawful distribution of nearly 70 million opioid pills, over 30 million doses of other commonly abused prescription drugs. As alleged Houston area pill mill pharmacies, authorities said that the street value of the pills is at 1.3 billion with a B. Billion with a B. 3 Houston area pharmacy operators were also charged for their role in schemes. It's just disappointing. We don't like this. We don't like when this comes up, and I'm reporting on it because it's out there and it's in the news, and it's just a heads up that it's the ethical pharmacist out there, the pharmacy operator, the pharmacy owner that are heroes, and are giving you a shout out right now this month. The entire month of October is American Pharmacist Month, and Pharmacy Times is covering the kickoff of this month with a great interview. The title of this article on Pharmacy Times is American Pharmacist Month. Alan Corley discusses the importance of pharmacy to patients. And I like how Alan goes through his interview and he's from Greenville, Tennessee, and a nominee for Cardinal Health's Community Leadership Award. A shout out to Cardinal Health, who is one of the Pharmacy Podcast Network sponsors, and they have an amazing podcast called Counter Talk. Thank you so much for your support, Cardinal Health, and thank you for recognizing the work of Alan Corley. And in his interview, he goes through the changes that our profession's going through and the opportunities of pharmacists, and how pharmacists have more opportunities to do things in their passion. Geriatrics, pediatrics, pharmacogenomics, technology, research, clinical trials. He goes through a lot of this in this article. I would say go out to pharmacytimes.com and look this one up. The title, once again, is American Pharmacist Month. Alan Corley discusses the importance of pharmacy to patients. And we know damn well how important pharmacists are to patients and to communities and community health. Next up in our news is something coming from the Cleveland .com site, and this is titled "The National Pharmacy Chain to Lay Off Nearly 3,000 Workers." This was just published this week, and it goes into describing that CVS Health announced Tuesday it plans to lay off 2,900 employees, a move that comes about a year after the pharmacy chain laid off 5,000 workers. Mike DeAngelis, executive director of corporate communications, tells the USA Today that the latest round of layoffs will be primarily corporate roles. Well, thank goodness that it's corporate roles. And the layoffs are part of the company's effort to reduce $2 billion in costs. And guess why, stockholders of CVS Health? It's because you're just not making the return on that stock anymore because you put way too much attention on the profits and not enough on sustaining those stores that you shut down. And now you have to lay off all of these employees who trusted you, and you run amok and you ran the business right into the ground. And this is going to continue to happen. The FTC's got its teeth into the PBMs, so it's going to continue to shake out. And I say to the pharmacist out there, if you are laid off, right? If you are, definitely get your compensation and everything that you can get through being unemployed. And I'm sure your state has an employment system, but do not wait. Pay attention to today's TWIRx with what Thea is going to be talking about. Pay attention to our special sponsor that we're going to be announcing a little bit later. That's going to actually become infrastructure, business development, public relations, marketing infrastructure for entrepreneurial pharmacists who literally want to build businesses. So guess what? This is horrible news. Lots of people lost their job. I want to give a shout out and prayers to you in the stress that this is going to cause you and your family being laid off. But this is actually, in the long term, it's a good thing because it's going to rebuild our pharmacy profession, and it's going to put our pharmacists in the driver's seat again. And it's going to give you opportunity to do different things. Whether you go to another employer and you decide to be employed, there's nothing wrong with that. Technology that's out there, new services that are out there, new pharmacies that are popping up. The independent pharmacies that are out there are going to be looking for people. The ones that are established are going to be looking for people. And next up, I did want to, which is very relevant to today's conversation, I want to point out another story that came out of DME Pharmacy. This is a magazine, and it's DME Pharmacy. And the title is Pharmacy Teams Under Pressure. And it goes through a wonderful article about how the NCPA has filed a class action lawsuit over changes to the healthcare cyber attack losses and how that all panned out. But there is a huge article here in this magazine that talks about pharmacy under stress, under pressure. It's a great story. It's great journalism. A shout out to the organization putting this together, the WTWH Healthcare. Once again, WTWH Healthcare, which is a publishing company I've never heard of. And I've been around pharmacy for 20 plus years, never heard of this publishing organization. I'll probably be reaching out to you guys because we could probably do something together. But amazing opportunity for pharmacists coming in the new year, 2025. We're covering a lot of what's happening. I want to give a shout out to a pharmacy owner that just returned to the Pharmacy Podcast Network through Pharmacy Crossroads, which is Bruce Nealon's show. And he Ken Tai is a rock star in California with 986 pharmacies and K&B GPO. This guy is a business mogul. He's an amazing guy, Ken Tai. An amazing guy, Ken Tai. Just a champion of pharmacy, a champion of community health. Take a listen to Ken Tai. You can get all these podcasts through your favorite player on Apple, on Spotify. Take a listen to that. Also, today's episode, today's feature is brought to you by RX Mile. RX Mile did a 3-part series with the Pharmacy Podcast Network. The name of the podcast is The Last Mile with RX Mile. This is a wonderful 3-part series about how Canol Vias, a technologist, a pharmacy owner, how he's leveraging a GPS-backed system to become a courier, to soak up so much of what's happening in pharmacy deserts, and to use his technology to empower local community pharmacists to reach your footprint, grow your footprint, take advantage of the 8,000 pharmacies that are shutting down right now. I don't care if it's a community pharmacy that's a 1 or 2 or 3 or however many you have, and the consultant pharmacist. Reach out to the Pharmacy Podcast Network if you're listening right now and you're interested in becoming a consultant pharmacist and using GPS technology. There's definitely a way to get this done. But this 3-part series is called The Last Mile with RX Mile, and all 3 parts will be listed on our website as well as RX Mile's website. We just released our LinkedIn coverage of this. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, you can go to my profile, Todd, and the last name Eury, E-U-R-Y, and look up The Last Mile with RX Mile. This is a wonderful series brought to us by this team. And it goes through the impact of pharmacy deserts. It goes through technology. It goes through the courier network, the national courier network that Canol and the RX Mile team has built. It's a fascinating technology. It's a technology that's infusing profitability into community pharmacies by expanding, once again, your footprint. Today's episode, a shout out to RX Mile, and you can go to rxmile.com to learn more. We are so thrilled that RX Mile is coming back for a second and a follow-up to their series, and we're going to do some additional interviews and interviewing pharmacy owners. All right, up on TWIRx, we're talking with Thea Blystone. I can't wait for you to hear this. Without further ado, here's Thea. Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, welcome to TWIRx. I have an in the studio guest, and everybody that watches TWIRx knows how excited I get when I get to TWIRx with someone else instead of always twerking by myself. Hey, do you twerk by yourself?
No, I don't twerk by myself. No, just with my children.
Just with my children. Dr. Thea Blystone, welcome to TWIRx. Welcome to This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I made the trip down. This is awesome little studio you got here.
I've been waiting for this. You're from Meadville, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I lived in Cochranton for a very short period of time in my life. It was in the sticks, and it reminds me of actually home here in Brownsville. It it has the remnants of that.
It sure does. Yeah, Cochranton to Meadville is about 10 miles, and there's not much changing between that dynamics. But yeah, it was a nice travel down here, and I would say that Brownsville is pretty awesome little town.
If you're sitting at home and you're like, I am really hungry for extremely good sushi, where would you go?
I would come to Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing really there. So
nothing Erie based?
Not really. Nothing that I would write home about.
Because I was lucky in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. There was one place that we really liked, and it went out of business. And now we have to go to Morgantown, which is where WVU School of Pharmacy is. So I don't mind going down there.
No. Yeah, it's a pretty easy travel from here too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would jump on 43, the turnpike, and go right down. And, I'm thinking with the changes in our profession, the changes in the role of our pharmacists, the reason why I'm excited that you're here is talking about remote pharmacy services and how those are expanding. We always talk with one of our clients, Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, about some of their services that they're building in. They call their program the iCare Plus program. But the struggle that I deal with is our podcasts are now being listened to by about 40 to 50,000 listeners per month. Majority of them are pharmacists. How many pharmacists that I talk with on LinkedIn and social media who are like, I wish I could do this. And you have built something that finally gets the log jams out of the way, that doesn't You don't have to figure out the incident to billings. You don't have to figure out the processes. You don't. So we have to open up right now, right? I want you to talk to our listeners, talk to them about what you've created that actually you could get going with it. You can get going with it right now. It's not something that's a pie in the sky. It's ready to go because you actually beat it up and you put it through its infancy and now it's a program.
Yeah. And that really is the opportunity for us to be able to take what we know as pharmacists and expand into care management and take the silo of healthcare down away from pharmacists, because pharmacists really know what to do with how to show up for patients. And when I look at or coined the term, remote pharmacy services, it came to me because I was sick of doing the gamut of pharmacy. I had done all different kinds of aspect of pharmacy, from retail independent, retail floating. I did long-term care dispensing and consulting. I've done remote MTM work. And then I went into the hospital, and all of those aspects of pharmacy left me with a hole, left me with no opportunity to care for patients like I knew how to, when I would care for them at the pharmacy counter and show up for them, have those engaging conversations. And, I get told a lot that this is like a rainbow or a unicorn, or this is all preaching to the choir. Yeah, pharmacists know we can do it, but no one's telling us how. Well, here's the thing. I had to learn. I had to figure it out. Back in 2018 and 2019, I took probably 6 months to figure out what I wanted to do and what parts of pharmacy I wanted to carry with me. And then I found care management services, and it really allowed me to look at life differently on, can I show up for patients? Can I use my knowledge as a pharmacist and get paid to do it? And I was like, wow, this really can be something we make very, very fruitful for ourselves in the pharmacy profession, quite honestly, because if we look at dispensing and where it's going, it's not allowing us to grow as pharmacists and share our knowledge. So, being able to take what I know as a pharmacist, show up monthly for patients, help the physicians really learn about what pharmacists can deliver, as well as even trying to share with them that we are knowledgeable about things like quality metrics and, building this as a business opportunity and being able to really help push outcomes for the patients is an amazing opportunity. And that's what has taken me over the last 5 years, 6 years now, is really hone in the ability to how to do it, how to go to doctor's offices, how to go to health entities to be able to get a contract to do remote care on these patients. And it's really just meeting the patient where they are month over month with their healthcare plan that the doctor has already set in motion. You're just coming alongside to augment the opportunity. And I feel like that's what pharmacists have always done, is augment the medical community with an opportunity and access to patients directly. And the patients are coming to us, to be able to help them become healthier adults in America. And when you look at the programs, there's so many opportunities when Medicare and Medicaid are behind these programs to be able to get paid for our knowledge. And so I've taken, all my 6 years of this space and kind of put it together into a program that allows for other pharmacists, whether you are a pharmacy owner and you want this for your pharmacy, whether you're a pharmacy consultant, or maybe you're in a retail job that you can't do anymore, or you are a long-term care pharmacist consultant who wants to do more or is worried about the long-term care at home legislation that may come down the line of pushing people away from long-term care facilities. And then what are we going to do? Maybe you're an ambulatory care pharmacist that says, my job's going to be eliminated if I don't start making revenue for my clinic. All of these aspects of pharmacy can use care management services, use remote pharmacy services to their benefit, and become independent of their schedule. They can be independent of volume metrics that have to become a problem. And, really have location independence, work-life balance that pharmacists struggle with today because, quite frankly, the volumes are not allowing us to do that, with the revenues decreasing and demand increasing, really, with pharmacy closures and all of the things. So it's really takes aspects of all the pieces of pharmacy I've ever done and really puts it into a package of, I know how to show up for patients, and I want to share that with the world of pharmacy, because I think that is the legacy that we have in changing the dynamic of how pharmacists show up in the world today. And through my my pivot program, you can do just that and get through everything I show is proven. I've modeled it. I give you everything that I have put into my own business to make sure that you succeed in yours.
All right. So one of my favorite movies is Jerry Maguire when he screams out, "Show me the money." And the whole concept behind that, for all you young people who probably don't know what I'm talking about, I start using analogies and movie lines that now my generations don't get anymore. And I'm like, I have to go start watching more movies to make more context. But show me the money. Talk to me about the money. Like, if I'm a pharmacist, I want to jump into this. How long is it going to, because there's a lot of irritation when I talk to pharmacists that want to make entrepreneurial moves. well, they'll say to me, how long am I going to have to do a side hustle?
Yeah.
Because of and I know that there is an aspect to that, and you have to be ready to put in, extra hours to get yourself to take flight. But give us an idea of how long it would take a pharmacist to take flight to be able to do it 100% of the time. And then what's the money involved? And you've given me several models, including like 250 patients and that whole model. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think that is one of the highest questions I get asked is what aspect of it can replace my salary, right? We get used to that W-2 coming in and we're a little leery about leaving it. And I think that when we look at starting at ground zero, so say you're new to this, you want to retire from retail and you want to do your own thing and you came to me, what I'd tell you is that I need 6 months of your time and I need you to give me 3-4 hours a week to be able to do that. Now, that is a side hustle at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really looking at what the work is to set up the business, to be able to move it forward, and to be able to go have conversations about it. That is the piece that I would say is the most daunting to people. And that's why I'm with you along the way to mentor you along the way as well. But I would say that it takes a good 2 or 3 months of looking at who's in my network that I can work with and how do I get there and what the contracts look like in that piece. And again, that's all covered in the course. And I would say once you start seeing patients, to be able to replace a pharmacist's salary, you really need to try to get, I would say upwards of about 50 to 100 patients is a good load. I think from a standpoint of being able to do it full time, you could handle upwards of 250 patients a month to be able to offer services to them. I think that's a great number. I did have a pharmacist come to me a couple weeks ago and she said to me, she goes, okay, well, I'm in your course now and I was talking to my husband and we need to replace my pharmacist salary like right now. And I was like, well, give me exact numbers. What do you want to accomplish? And she said, well, my husband's ideal goal is for me to make between $200,000 and $300,000. And I was like, well, you're in the right pharmacy business because I must not be, because I'm not getting anywhere near $300,000 as a pharmacist anyways. And I said, okay, well, if we take that number and say, if we wanted to look at one service line in care management, there's lots of different service lines. One of the most lucrative is remote patient monitoring. And I said, well, let's look at the remote patient monitoring opportunity. It allows for us to bill out around $125 per patient per month. And I said, okay, if you want to make between $200,000 and $300,000, then we need to try to divvy up the math. And it ended up being around 167 to be exact. But I told her 170 patients. And she was like, well, that's all well and good. I know how many patients I need. And while that's not full time, I'm not really sure with 4 kids, I can do all of that by myself. And I said, well, here's the luxury. With remote patient monitoring, you really only have to do 20 to 40 minutes per month with each patient. And I was like, so if we spend 20 minutes with those 170 patients, we're about 60 to 70 hours per month on work. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait, is the math right? I did it 3 times because I just didn't think it was right. And it is. In fact, it is correct. You can make between $200,000 and $300,000 with 170 patients running about half a workload, part-time work for over, if you figure 80 hours a month is about part-time. And that would be about 1 or 2 physician offices. So it's not a lot. It's not a heavy lift from contract standpoints. And it really allows for pharmacists to show up and be able to see the patients on actually how their plans are working for them. How are their medication regimens working for them when they have a condition you can monitor with remote patient monitoring? And she was completely astounded because she could do that and spend 60, 70 hours a month doing the work and raising 4 kids. And she was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So let's talk about getting started with you. What's the investment that I would make as a pharmacist to move forward with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's 2 options for my course. There's the course only model with all of the, the playbook and all of my templates and stuff. That's $19.97, broken down even over a monthly process. If that was something, you get full access to the course for the whole month. Or you could go up to the mentor time with me plus the course and the booklet, which is what I really recommend, because everyone's unique network is going to drive them in different ways, whether you're in the functional medicine space or the pharmacogenomic space, or maybe you have long-term care and medical directors. So being able to work with me on that one-on-one mentorship time is I'm able to personalize it even more for what you have in a network. And so that program is, again, 12 months. You can break it down over a 12-month payment plan, but it's $43.95 for that, where you get one-on-one Zoom support by me.
Okay. And then what do you think, from the people that have gone through your courses, what do you think the biggest barriers once they complete the course is to kind of get it going? What is it? Probably time management more than anything, huh?
Yeah, a lot of it is time management and scheduling time blocks and doing the opportunity to, when you are available, to get the work that needs done in that 2 to 3 hours I was talking about early in the process and in the program. Just making sure you're setting that up for yourself and in the business model that you have, in the time that you have to be able to do that, I think is super important. And then the other one is, pharmacists have never had to market themselves. And I know you and I have talked a lot about marketing. And, pharmacists are a little leery because we've never had to show up in a manner that asks us to be at the table. Well, because quite frankly, we've always only ever had to walk in with a resume and we got a job. It was never a process of coming off and trying to sell the service. And I think for a lot of pharmacists, that's the hardest piece, is because they will say they don't know how to do that. But I always revert back to, but you understand patient care. And when you take the marketing word away and say, I can deliver exceptional patient care through these particular programs, I know how to care for patients. Why don't you let me come alongside? Takes the marketing piece out and really allows people to be a little more comfortable with going out and asking. So
that's great. Plus, it's just leveraging your community and the community that knows you, and announcing it to your, letting your mom know, letting your mom's friends know, letting your aunts and your go out to your friends and be like, hey, listen, I'm doing this new consultative service that's providing so much needed value, because physicians aren't able to scale like this and take care of, because it's the pharmacists that are going to lead those treatments, and it's all connected back to the program that you built.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. You have to look at the network that's around you that support you. If you have people that know, like, and trust you in your communities, this is an amazing opportunity. And you just leverage that by opening up the world of, hey, I am a pharmacist and I don't want to dispense all the time anymore. And I want to offer more care, and I know I can. And I'd love to discuss that conversation with you. That's and awesome. Just plant that seed now.
All right. We're excited here on TWIRx. Dr. Thea Blystone. Thea, she's coming back in about a month or 2, depending on this conference season that's coming up. Crazy conference season. I have 3 conferences in October. So we have to have you back in November, and we're going to go through that next phase. We're going to go through a marketing program, and we're going to also go through a special operations program that will help you to accelerate the Pivot program, and being able to take Pivot and now put it on steroids and really Fire it up.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the fired up version is, because anything Todd puts his mind to definitely tends to get on fire. So I'm excited to see how we can work together and really bring this to light for the legacy of pharmacy, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is making sure that we share what we know so that the communities across the country have the support that they need.
Go to tmrx.care. That's once again, tmrx.care. You'll see it on your screen now. If you don't see it on your screen, you're driving, you're jogging, you're doing something, you're not in front of your computer or your mobile phone watching us on YouTube, that's fine. It will be in the show notes. Thea is accessible via LinkedIn, THEA, Thea Blystone. Very easy to find you. I stalked you on LinkedIn for many years before even reaching out, and I loved, enjoyed the fact that you worked with, actually, I had a client up in Meadville, Vantage, for a little while, that was using Framework LTC or something like that, which it's like a big cycle. I'm getting old. I've been around too long, and now I'm starting to connect the stories.
Oh.
Thea, this has been very special. Thank you for being here at This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you for having me.
We will move on. We're going to take a quick break and come back with the next segment. Do not change your, what is it, your dial? Oh, no, it's not a.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
And we're back. This Week in Pharmacy. Wasn't that an amazing interview with Thea? That just doesn't that get your gears turning? If you were an entrepreneur or if you were a pharmacist that wanted to build a business, she already has the blueprint. She's successful at it herself. She wants you to be successful at it. Reach out to her. We're going to have the links there. All right. On to our next episode. This is about compounding. Compounding is very important to our profession. It's important to the infrastructure, our ecosystem of health. We need more compounders out there. I rely on the Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding to tell me what's going on with our world in compounding. And I appreciate the information that Scott and his team bring us, and Tenille Davis, what she brings us with her expertise in compounding is so important. I want you to listen to this interview, understand what's going on. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor of this segment. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about this organization, because this organization is the infrastructure of the Pharmacy Podcast Network's ability to expand. The problem with being an entrepreneur, one of the biggest problems, I mean, we could sit here and make a whole episode on what are the problems with being an entrepreneur. Money, that's one of them. But one of the problems that we've experienced, that I've experienced, is infrastructure and being able to rely on the abilities of people to help you scale. And we now have a team member, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. A shout out to Omar. He's just amazing. He is our new client success manager. I think it's a client success manager. Yeah. Is that a CSM? Client success? Yeah, he's our CSM. I could say that now. But it's going to help us scale. He's going to help follow up with client projects and being a source of finding information, not only for our clients, but internally for the rest of our team in publishing as a small publisher. So excited about this. But this organization, led by Salim Shah, who's been on other TWIRx with me, he's going to be on talking about, we're going to break things down so that you know as a pharmacist what gear that you want to shift so that you can get to the next level and have an organization that understands healthcare. Salim is a pharmacist. It's in his blood. I cannot wait to share with you what we're bringing to the table to light entrepreneurial pharmacists on fire. And instead of you going trickle, 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 little bits by little bits, growing and growing, don't grow like I did. Do not grow over 15 years, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. Like, don't grow like that. That was it. If I had this organization 15 years ago, or let's even say 10 years ago, it'd have been a whole different environment. So I'm excited about where this is going to take us as a publication. I'm even more excited about where this is going to take you. A pharmacy. We're talking about independent pharmacies that want to launch programs. We're talking about a new DME key style turnkey DME program that you just bolt onto your community pharmacy. We're talking about Thea Blystone situations where you want to build your remote patient services and remote pharmacy services, but you don't have a marketer, you don't have business development, you don't have doctor detailing, you don't have communications or public relations. It's coming. Does that sound in your ears if you have your earbuds in, you're listening to a podcast? Is that creepy when I whisper? It's coming. RXPR. The website's not even out yet. I'm having given secrets away. RXPR. We can't wait. I'm excited about expanding services for pharmacists, for entrepreneurs, for individual pharmacies, our independent community pharmacies. Lots coming in 2025. We are going to light the industry on fire, starting with entrepreneurs, but also our independent community pharmacies. Going to be doing some work with specialty pharmacies who are already interested in these kind of communication and PR services that are all focused on specifically them in the realm that they're after, communicating with other HCPs, very heavy in the B2B realm of being able to partner with payers, partner with health systems, partner with your school districts. So be on the lookout for that coming. I don't want to hold this next interview up. We have to bring on Thea. So with that, or I'm sorry, Tenille from APC. With that, let's play that interview next on TWIRx. Hey, on This Week in Pharmacy, Tenille Davis is back. It's so good to have you back, Tenille. Last time you were here, it was on This Week in Pharmacy back in September, beginning of the month. And we were talking about what's next for compounding. And we knew that you were having the Super Bowl event for compounders, which was Compounders on Capitol Hill. So welcome back to the Pharmacy Podcast. Welcome back to TWIRx.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back and glad to give you guys an update about what happened with our big meeting last week. Pharmacy compounders from all over the country flew to Washington, D.C. to attend our yearly conference. It's a fly-in event called Compounders on Capitol Hill. We had a really successful meeting this year. We had 250 attendees and 150 meetings with members of Congress, senators, members of the House, sometimes their legislative aides, to discuss issues surrounding compounding and how our members of Congress could potentially help. So it was a great meeting. We also hosted, in conjunction with it, our first ever legal symposium. So the first day of the conference included 3 hours of an additional programming, which was speeches and presentations given by some of the most prominent pharmacy compounding attorneys in the country, like Carla Palmer and Rachel Ponticus, Mark Bowes and Stephen Snow. So it was a really great event, and we were glad to have that many people show up.
That's great. As we talked last time, we were saying how important it is that compounding needs to actually expand and not shrink. And we know there are forces out there that want to capsulize or put it into a pill and try to get everybody to dial into the same compound and manufactured compound at that. And we were saying that part of the issue is the education to the policymakers and to the legislators to let them know what compounding really does and how dialing into a patient's specific need can't be a lost art of the original purpose of our pharmacists. And
Yeah.
I kind of want you to expand on that whole thing and tell me about some of the stories of sharing some of that information with the politicians.
Sure. I mean, we know that compounding is indicated in two specific instances for patients. One, when an FDA-approved drug isn't appropriate for a patient. So a patient has an allergy to an excipient or a preservative, needs a liquid dosage form, they can't swallow a tablet, needs a different route of administration. That's been kind of out there forever. Everyone knows compounding in the kind of that regard. What's been really prevalent in the media lately is compounding in the second instance in which it's indicated, and that's when an FDA-approved medication is not accessible to a patient. So that's when we're talking about drug shortages. Drug shortages have been a major issue in our country for a long time, but because of the spotlight that's been on the major new blockbuster GLP-1 drugs and the shortages that those manufacturers have experienced, pharmacy compounders have been able to step in and kind of fill the gaps and provide essentially a copy of those FDA-approved medications for a continuation of patient care. Once those medications are no longer in shortage, pharmacy compounders can no longer prepare those copies. But what's been kind of portrayed in the media and sort of kind of pushed as a narrative by these drug makers is that compounding is the same as counterfeit drug sales, or compounding is the same as these illegal online drug sellers that will sell, research grade peptides without a prescription. And those are not the same thing. So we did a lot of work on the Hill educating our members of Congress, how to differentiate between legitimate, reputable state licensed pharmacy compounders and what is not compounding. These counterfeit drug sales, those are not compounding. If a patient is able to receive a vial of an injectable medication without a visit, either, a telemedicine visit or an in-person visit from a prescriber, that's not compounding. Compounding pharmacies only fill legitimate legitimate prescriptions written by licensed prescribers. So that was part of our talking points on the Hill is we had a one-pager briefing, which was 5 things about GLP-1 compounding for them to know. So explaining about how we source the API or active pharmaceutical ingredients, how we're required to get it from, FDA registered manufacturers, and the testing requirements of the product, the fact that these essential copies are only able to be produced while the drugs are on shortage. So we had that as kind of a briefing document as well. One of the other things that we asked our members of Congress to do was to send a template letter that we gave them regarding the demonstrably difficult to compound list. And this past spring, FDA published a Federal Register notice where it intended to finalize the 6 criteria that it would use to determine if a drug was demonstrably difficult to compound, in addition to the 3 types of drugs that it was going to include in that first 503A and 503B demonstrably difficult to compound list. We explained to members of Congress, this is a really complicated issue. It's hard to, describe to legislative aides and members of Congress that have never kind of dealt with these complicated FDA terms, but that they don't have the statutory authority to put categories of drugs on the 503A demonstrably difficult to compound list, only drug products. So we kind of laid out that this was statutory. It doesn't meet their statutory requirements. And then also them finalizing the 6 criteria at the same time they're including the first 3 types of drugs should be done separately rather than in one package. The 3 types of drugs that they nominated are hot melt extrusions, these really strange products that no compounding pharmacies are making in the country currently. But one of the things about the demonstrably difficult to compound list is that there's no mechanism to remove things from the list if technology advances or changes to a point where those things are no longer demonstrably difficult to compound. So I know it's a really complicated issue. That's why we wrote this template letter for the members of Congress to send to FDA, because it's really hard, even for our pharmacist members, to map wrap their brains around, let alone a member of Congress that's maybe not that familiar with compounding, as a practice at all.
True. So where are you with this initiative to inform, educate, support the FDA to let them know what the factual data is versus, I remember in June reading, just came out June 2024, there was headlines that said drug makers, compounders at odds over FDA's difficult to compound rule. So what's the next phase of that to bring more clarity to that?
Well, sure. So they published in the spring of 2024 the proposed final rule, and there was a comment period. So we submitted a comment just like a lot of other people. Interestingly enough, Novo Nordisk also submitted a comment supporting FDA's, finalization of the demonstrably difficult to compound rule. And interestingly enough, on August 28th, Eli Lilly nominated tirzepatide for the demonstrably difficult to compound list. As compounders, we think this is kind of silly. Like, agreed, semaglutide and tirzepatide are difficult molecules to manufacture. Peptides are not an easy API for FDA registered manufacturers to create, but compounding with them is not difficult. You essentially mix it with water, a buffer, and a preservative, and sterilize it, and bam, there you go. So it would be really hard to argue that those are demonstrably difficult to compound. But we'll see what happens with FDA and when they actually publish this final rule, if and when. So hopefully, they take these comments into account that were submitted to them and don't publish this final rule without some edits, but we'll see what happens.
So between the now and then, are compounding pharmacies held back from doing something, or is it one of those cases that everything can move forward until the new rule comes out?
Yeah, everything can move forward until the new rule comes out. So FDA was promulgated to publish this demonstrably difficult to compound list, but they have not finalized it. So we've only got a proposed final rule. We don't have a final rule that's been published. So, and the first three drugs on this demonstrably difficult to compound list, like I said, no one is actually compounding with from a effect in the industry, it wouldn't be really much of anything. But if they finalize these categories and include these first three, it kind of opens the door to the process, to the FDA to continue to add things to the list. And there's a potential they could add things to the list that are commonly compounded and very much needed by patients, like transdermal therapies. So sure, pharmacies right now don't have the technology really to compound, say, patches of medications, but we compound lots of medications intended for transdermal delivery. Veterinary species like methimazole in cats, we make a cream that goes on the inside of their ears, so it's really hard to get a tablet down a cat. We make lots of hormones that are, absorbed transdermally into the bloodstream. So that could be problematic if they included those kind of categories of drugs in future additions to the demonstrably difficult to compound list.
So, should we be coaching our compounding pharmacies, maybe that didn't get to attend compounders in Capitol Hill, through even this podcast that they're listening right now? Should we say, hey, let's stay ahead of this, reach out to your state Congress people, teach them about compounding, invite them in for a tour to your compounding pharmacy just to stay ahead of it, so that when the FDA does come out with something and it may or may not be what APC and the for the industry, the best of the patient care needs and wants, is there any element to strategy there to stay ahead of it?
Absolutely. So in our newsletter, we had essentially a place that you could sign your name on, and it would fill out a letter for you to send to your member of Congress informing of these issues if you weren't able to attend Compounders on Capitol Hill. And we always encourage our members to invite their members of Congress in to visit their pharmacies, or even their legislative aides of their members of Congress, because some of the perceptions that are inaccurate about compounding, that it's kind of like back alley, that exist in the media, are unfair to pharmacy compounders. And if you get your member of Congress in your pharmacy one time and open their eyes to what it actually is, that we're operating state-of-the-art laboratories and creative medications and have, lots of processes and procedures in place to ensure quality of their products, it can change their perception about compounding a lot. Any pharmacist that wants to set up one of those meetings into their compounding pharmacy and wants any help could reach out to me anytime. We have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. that have relationships with these people and their aides in their offices that we can coordinate these sort of things. I can have a briefing call or Zoom, or depending on where it is, even fly and kind of help get that pharmacist ready, explain all the talking points, explain how to address these sort of issues with them. But yeah, it's a super effective tool to actually invite them in.
This is great. Well, this is fun to have you back so quickly from This Week in Pharmacy at the beginning of the month. Now we're publishing the overview of how successful Compounders in Capitol Hill was and giving us some updates. Dr. Tenille Davis, we really appreciate your time and the updates that you're giving us through This Week in Pharmacy. If you have questions and you're listening, I want you to go to the website. It's a4pc.org. Once again,
the number 4.
pc.org. And then you're active on LinkedIn too as well, right?
Yeah, I am. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Tenille, Tenille Davis. My email is Tenille, my name, at a4pc.org. You're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to be of assistance to any compounder, and we'd love to have you join APC if you're not already a member. And if you're doing compounding, even a little bit of compounding can carry a lot of risk. So it's good to be a part of your trade association so we can keep you up to date to the latest challenges and opportunities in the marketplace. Excellent.
Thank you so much for coming back to This Week in Pharmacy. And I want to work with you guys. I have to reach out to Scott and bend his ear and get on his press corps.
Yeah, we'd love that.
All right. We'll talk to you next time on This Week in Pharmacy.
Thanks, Todd. Bye.
Alrighty. What a show. We packed that one full, rocket ship of information. If you're listening, you're still listening after an hour and 2 minutes. Congratulations, making it through This Week in Pharmacy. This is your talk show. If you want to improve this, you want to become part of This Week in Pharmacy, I'm always looking for correspondents out there in our nation and just telling the story of what's happening in our profession. Bring us stories, bring us good news, bring us bad news. We'll spin it so we can at least get something positive out of it. Hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate the pharmacy technicians. Shout out to the NPTA who joined the Pharmacy Podcast Network, bringing us a show all about technicians. Thank you so much, Ashley and Mike from the NPTA, dedicating that time to participating. And our techs are a big part of this profession. For every one pharmacy out there, I think there's 2.3, 2.5, maybe even 3 technicians. All right, well, that was This Week in Pharmacy. If there's anything that we can ever do for you, be on the lookout for the new services coming through our publication, but also other organizations that we're going to be teaming up with. And if you're going to the NCPA, the National Community Pharmacists Association, please reach out to us. Please stop by and say hello. We will be at Ural Pharma's booth, and we will be at the Real Value RX booth. We'll be floating around, but get in touch with me before that so that we can plan some time together. Peace out. We will talk to you next time on This Week in Pharmacy.